Hello and welcome to This Week in Property. I'm your host Richard Swan, and in today's show we have that gentleman, if you're watching online today instead of just listening to it in the car, is Mr. Dale Smith. So first of all, Dale, hello and welcome to the show.
No, nice to meet you, Richard. Thanks for having me on. Looking forward to it.
Yes, very, very much. Because, folks, who are you going to hear from today? What wonderful opinions and experiences and backgrounds and stuff are you going to hear about in the world of property? Well, this gentleman here, Dale Smith, has got quite a story. We're talking about a very successful property entrepreneur, love that word, with over 15 years of experience. We're talking residential, commercial, very much holiday home is a kind of important topic we're going to jump onto today. Development, property management, you name it, an incredible background. And we're talking the company that we kind of put stuff under as an umbrella, if you like, with Dale, is the SDDE Smith Group. All the links are inside the show notes, so make sure you click on them and follow him and follow the companies that are there. And we're talking about a scale which has started back in March 2017. One holiday home, yeah. What's it done in 4 years? We're talking, oh my goodness, over 300 employees. We're talking 11 customer-facing brands. We're talking managing over 750 properties and projected revenue of over £30 million in this year, 2023. What a story. Dale, can you even believe that when I start to kind of recap on things for you?
No, it's been an exciting journey, Richard. It certainly has been. I as you said, got started back in March 2017, and obviously been involved in property before that.
Oh yes.
But yeah, no, some good numbers, some exciting times. There's still plenty more to do, but yeah, enjoying the journey so far.
Yeah, no wonder. And what a journey, because it's funny, I think to myself personally, when I look at yourself involved in property, I have a background in, IT and stuff like that. And property investment, it was always this thing I kind of built up on the side. And for yourself, going back to days when your dad to these first buy-to-let, you started getting your first buy-to-let, the motor industry, that was a big thing for yourself, was it?
Yeah, completely. So my dad's background, motor industry, worked for Edge Vardy for a long time. We both moved and worked for Peter Vardy up in Scotland for several years. That's where I spent most of my career, was up in Scotland working for Peter, and I learnt a lot from that.
Yeah.
And a lot of what is employed in our business today comes off my experience there. But yeah, property was always kind of trickling along there in the background as a hobby, as an investment.
Yeah.
And I had a real passion for it. So I knew at one point, at some point in time, that was what I wanted to do, was the main focus and the day to day. And yeah, 2017 was that kind of turning point for us.
It's amazing. Obviously, you could see the power in it then. And as well as the motor industry, I believe golf is a big thing in your background, because was there a time when you were doing your kind of first buy-to-let, copying what your dad had done, but then also, was it off to the States? You were kind of jetting around, weren't you?
It was. So I was lucky enough to go and play college golf in the US. So I played at the University of San Diego. So I lived the dream for 4 years in the sunshine, playing golf and doing school every day. So I did that 2006 till 2010. Golf, I kind of fell out of love with the game a little bit while I was out there. Golf for me was, I've always been a sportsman, love football, love golf, really into my sport. But there was always something else, along the side. I've always been interested in finance and business and the property side of things as well. So for me, golf wasn't the be all and end all, like many of my kind of peers at that point in time.
Yeah.
So I had a fantastic journey, loved every minute. Again, learnt a lot from it. But when I came back to the UK, kind of mid recession in 2010 at that point, it was into the motor industry. I always thought I wouldn't go into the motor industry, but I did, and never look back. I really enjoyed it. The motor industry is a fantastic industry. High revenues, low margins, fast paced, good learning ground for everything you need, I think.
Oh, absolutely. And you covered so many of those, those areas with marketing and sales and all sorts of things through that, the journey that you took in that corporate world, which is brilliant. And Peter Vardy, massive name, massive name up in Scotland. Reg Vardy previously, absolutely. Good on you. And family.
Yeah.
It's amazing the influence that it can have on us. And when we have our dreams of doing something, building a business, etc. Because, your dad might never have done that first buy-to-let, or maybe he did, and you were that son that, I saw that, Dad, I'm doing something else. Quite an important kind of position for you there in your young life.
Yeah, totally. And I suppose, my dad's always been heavily involved in terms of what I've done from a sport point of view. And, I've always looked up to him in terms of that. I always say there's probably three key influential people as mentors in my life still today. They've kind of been on that journey at certain points with me. My dad's certainly one of those, and he was the one that got me interested and hooked from a property point of view. And we've been lucky enough to go on that journey together. Kind of second then for me was my college golf coach, who obviously looked after me while I was in the US and really built a good relationship and rapport with. He's an investor in our business today still, and we speak regularly and see quite regularly as and when he's still in the golf world. And then third being, Peter himself, who was my chief exec up at when I was working with Vardy's and took me under his wing, and obviously progressed quickly through my career up there. So those three people have been heavily influential in my journey so far, and still are, certainly on a monthly basis, if not even sometimes a daily basis as well. I think that, key in terms of all that. There's that family piece for us is critical, and it's other people around you as well that can almost play some type of family-like role to a certain degree, but certainly from a mentorship point of view, all three of those people have been paramount to the journey so far.
That's fantastic. And that mentor, that coach figure, that guidance, whatever you want to kind of call it, would you say that's not just something that you needed? I mean, if there's kind of young boys and girls listening in and they've got dreams of, growing businesses and everything else, is it something you would recommend to everyone?
Definitely. And I think it's interesting. I think there's a certain degree you can go out and try and find and identify those people. And I've done a little bit of that. And I think there's certain legs in that, but I think you will quite naturally, if you're going out there and speaking to people and putting yourself out there, you'll naturally attract and find those people, and they will become influential in your life. I think it's not a matter of saying, oh, I need to go and, I want to go and find that person. I'm looking for this, that, and the other. I think it's on that journey you will find them in some shape or form, and probably, even when you're not expecting it, they might come along, But I think you also can go and learn from certain people. So I think there's an element which is identifying people who are perhaps best in class in certain things that are developing, and going and finding from that and then what you can. But as part of going and doing that, you will meet people on your journey that I think ultimately will become those people to you.
Yeah. I said definitely is. It's something I can personally relate to. Definitely is. It's a cracking thing to kind of lean on, or have that wiser voice just whisper something differently in your head, just kind of keep you on track, etc. It's an amazing thing. And when it comes to property itself, I mean, you've got the buy-to-lets and things like that, commercial, residential, all sorts of things, but you are really well known, and certainly you've built a company and a structure and everything really well known all about this. It's a very topical thing these days, and has been for a number of years now. The SA market, the Furnished Holiday Let market, whatever label you want to put on it. But what I found funny, without this amazing thing that you've built up, this empire, you've told the story before that the first one was kind of an accident. You bought it, not, oh, we're going to do this. No, it was at this nice place, but it wasn't with that you had in mind, was it?
No, exactly that, Richard. So, we bought the first property, which is Burnside, back in Saltburn, which is our hometown, where we're from, where I grew up, and most of my family grew up as well. And it was a speculative purchase, really. It was a good property, good location. It was stuck on the market. Nobody could buy it because it needed significant work. It being underpinned, there was all sorts of different things wrong with it, which meant that traditional mortgages were just not going through on it. So it was a property that was on the market, I think, for about 225,000, and in reality, it should have been going, bidding up on it, and it wasn't moving because people just couldn't get funding on it. Right. So we managed to get a bridging loan on it. And get it over, bridging loan / kind of development finance on it, where there is more, more risk tolerance with those type of lenders. I look back at that lender we did that deal with at that point in time, because I'd never done a bridging loan before. Learned lots of lessons on that first transaction as well. But they're still our kind of key bridging loan partner today, and we've done loads of stuff with them off the back of that project and the relationship that we built. But yeah, we bought that because we could, and we were thinking at the time, well, even if we did it and we brought it back to life and sold it, or or it just became a standard buy to let, we didn't at that point in time on the purchase think, it's 100% going to be a holiday home. It was kind of, we were a few weeks into it and thinking more about it, thinking, well, actually, we need to do something different with this. It deserves more than just being a standard buy-to-let property, which would have been what we did all day long before.
Yeah.
And then that's brought us around to thinking, right, well, let's have a go at the holiday let side. And
Yeah.
even at that point in time, our plan was to use a third party to manage it, just one of the traditional agents. We weren't going to get involved, but again, that kind of changed, and we decided, right, let's do it ourselves using Airbnb and Booking.com initially. So everything that we do today has evolved from that one transaction, that one decision to kind of do something off course, and that's now evolved into what our kind of core focus is as a business perspective.
Yeah, it's amazing, isn't it? Those wee journeys when you join the dots looking backwards. Of course, at the time, it's it's this one property, this one transaction, and you're picking apart all these puzzles. Oh, there's problems with the financing, and well, maybe should we flip it? Should we hold it as a buy to? What about this brand new thing we've not really tried before? And then going through that, you muddling through that, you becoming the problem solver. You've created this thing. You've took those lessons, and then you've actually built something that helps a lot of people.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And it's, I speak to a lot of people who are kind of trying to build up this kind of perfect plan, or think that things need to be 100% in place before they take that next step. And it's not right. It's just it's working your way through it. There's not the perfect blueprint as much as people say there is. It's everybody's journey is different. Every business journey is different. It's about, making the best decision you can, or the most balanced decision you can. But a lot of it comes down to kind of a gut feel, and I think ultimately that your gut feel is better the more learning and the more you put yourself out there and picking things up. But certainly, looking back on that, like you say, it's a myriad of different decisions and directions that ultimately get you along the way. It's not a straight line, is it? Ultimately,
that's so many twists and turns. It's amazing. That's part of the fun, part of the journey, and the variety.
Completely.
It really is.
Yeah.
And when you think of that time, do you remember some of the key lessons? You probably still hold them these days, to be honest, inside your psyche about this of, there's the buy-to-let landlord. He's got a certain focus, a certain way of managing that asset, a certain way of thinking about the tenant. And then all of a sudden, well, see this furnished holiday let stuff, this SA stuff, it's kind of different. It's not a tenant, it's a guest. The property has to look different, so on and so forth. How you structure it, how you manage it. What are some of the kind of key things that you think really are the differences between the two mindsets as a landlord?
I suppose the bit that really attracted me to the holiday let side versus the buy to let was the fact that you could create some wow factor with the property. That's the one frustrating thing with buy to let, I suppose, is if you're looking at what you're doing from a refurbishment point of view, you're always looking at it and going, well, you could take it to the next level, but you're probably not going to see return on that because you're not going to get that back on your rental. And if you do, what conditions you get the property back in. So with the buy to let, it's quite rigid in terms of what works and how far you can take it.
Right.
And then when you look at it from a holiday home point of view, actually all those little touches do start to add value as long as they're delivered and marketed in the right way. And my background being sales and marketing, that's the bit I really love from a holiday let point of view is the marketing piece. You can go in, it's all about that first perception of the guest. So whether that is the wow factor when they open the front door from a design and interiors point of view, or whether you even take that back one step further and go what I would call zero moment of truth when they're looking for where they're going to stay. What's that first image? And ultimately that first image is going to be driven by what you've created inside the property. So we'll always look and think about, right, what's that first image on the website going to be? Because if that first image isn't right, that user is going to bypass that property. So that first photo you've got is actually what that guest is buying, unless they've stayed with you before. So the first time they're going to stay anywhere, that first image is what you're selling. So we spend a lot of time focused around that, and that image quality is critical. So when we first launched Burnside, right at the very beginning, I took some pictures on my iPhone. Luckily, 3 of my best friends are professional photographers, and one of them said, look, I'm going to come and do the photos for you because they're not good enough. And that was a massive learning curve for us, because now we have a dedicated team who only shoot our portfolio, but photography is a key factor in terms of what we do, in terms of being able to drive performance out of our holiday let properties. Photography is kind of number one, top of the list, because the photos aren't right, that person's not booking it. And suppose we see that. I mean, I'm guilty of it on Rightmove as much as we should as property investors pick the ones with the worst photos and no photos. You still can't help click on the one that looks good, can you? Because it's just human nature. You want to look at the one that looks good. So yeah,
That's
same
right.
philosophy there, I guess, from that point of view.
Yeah, that's some brilliant insights you're sharing to people. It really is. And funnily enough, I'm kicking myself as well and getting lessons as well. Because you're right, I fell into the right move trap. Absolutely. What am I doing?
Yeah,
Am I an
yeah,
investor or what? What am I doing here,
yeah.
Richard? Come on, behave. And then the other one, my wife and I went to Venice just recently. And when I think about, when you're talking there, I think about the Airbnb that we used there. We only picked that one because they hadn't got the photos right. It was by
Right.
accident. I had dismissed it by seeing the first photograph. And
Yeah.
then just by accident, I had saw maybe the seventh or eighth one that really sold it to me.
Right.
So
Okay.
I should maybe go back to them and tell them to reorder the photographs.
Yeah, exactly. 100%. And that's key. 100% right. It's back to what's that first photo? That's going to get you the click. Once
Yeah.
you've got the click and you're looking through, then we always say, right, how do you sell the property in 5 photos? Because the reality is, how many more, if you say that was your seventh or eighth photo, a
Yeah.
lot of people won't have, they might have clicked on the first one, but they might have looked at two and three and thought, well, no, I'm not feeling this back
Yeah.
into search. So, we look at guests normally make their mind up within 30 seconds whether they're going to progress or not. So
Mm.
that quality of photography, ordering of photography is absolutely crucial.
Right. Excellent stuff. Good man. It's amazing how your background all helps to this.
Yeah,
Again,
totally.
it's the dots going backwards. Oh, that's right. The time in the motor trade industry and sales and marketing, of course,
Yeah,
all ties together, which is tremendous. And those dots, just talking on that, so then you've mentioned Burnside, that kind of first
yeah,
almost accidental step in for yourself. But the kind of transformation that you did for that Burnside project, that then made other investors and other holiday home owners look to you and say, can you kind of do that for me, didn't it?
yeah, yeah, absolutely. So that was the next stage of the journey for us. Was I did a podcast with Mike Stenhouse just after that project,
Right.
really talking through what we delivered on the project, which then led on to a number of people getting in touch, basically saying, look, we want to invest in holiday homes, don't know what to do. We've seen what you've done. Is that something you could do for us? And that's really then what got us started in terms of external services, because at the point in time we first launched Burnside, we were thinking from our own investment point of view, okay, we'll add more holiday homes to that. We weren't again thinking, right, we need to manage other people's properties and provide this and the other service.
Yeah.
But the fact that people got in touch off the back of that quite quickly and were wanting that service, that that opened the door for us to think, actually, right, well, there's some benefit in this if we can provide that service for those people, find the property, refurbish it, and then manage it ongoing. It's
Yeah.
a different product to what was really there in the market. We've seen bits and pieces of that, probably mainly around HMOs and maybe a little
Yeah.
bit of buy to let, but it
Yeah.
wasn't really being done in the holiday let space at the time. It was very much holiday lets and SA. SA was coming around in 2017, but it's
Yeah.
probably with 2019 onwards where we really have seen that increase in terms of its presence in the market.
Yeah.
And yeah, that just opened the door for us to actually then become a service provider rather than just investors.
Yes.
And obviously, since then, being a service provider has been the core focus, and our own investment journey has obviously continued, but it's still very much been a sideline to the day-to-day core business, which is providing that end service to clients, from finding the right property to refurbishing it and designing it to then obviously ongoing management as well.
Yeah, because that's the thing. You really do deliver in all the areas. You've kind of, it's amazing how you've thought of the customer at the end of it and thought about them, not you as an investor doing your stuff. You're looking
Mm-hmm.
at it. So what do you need? How can we help you?
Yeah,
Or you need this managed for you. You would rather be a bit more hands off and stuff. Well, okay,
yeah,
then we'll deliver to that need. Or you
yeah,
need a hand with the kind of refurb or the interior design element, etc. Okay, then we'll build around that. You're
yeah,
that true entrepreneurial spirit of chasing the needs and giving
yeah,
the service for it.
yeah, totally. Because it's a very fragmented industry, and the thing with, I suppose HMOs are quite similar in that it is fragmented in the sense that there's lots of parts to the puzzle. Again, if we were
Yeah.
just looking at standard buy to let, then we're buying the property, we're refurbishing it, and then it's over to the tenant, and it is what it is from that point.
Yeah.
HMOs a little bit more like that, but then you do need involved design and that's a bit of a better sex appeal, I suppose, of the property in terms of it being attractive. But then the holiday lets is another level again in terms of how fragmented it is. So we've always looked at that and said, well, how can we make it as simple as possible for the client? And we know each of those component parts are essential to getting the performance out of the property.
Yeah.
And it's obviously consistent performance, because the thing with holiday homes, unlike HMOs, is there's no locked in contract period. So
yeah,
if it's not put, if it's not got a booking next week, we need to find one. It's consistently, moving the dial to make sure that asset keeps on performing. There's no, lock-in period where you think, okay, I can forget about that now for, X amount of weeks or months. It's continual every single day trying to drive performance, which is also what I love about it, because, it's, as an investment strategy, it's more involved. But it does mean that if you do focus on it, you can move the needle ultimately.
Yeah, that's it. You get creative about it and get real. The sleeves are rolled up, right? What are we going to do now then? Which is tremendous.
Exactly.
And is there key areas in your mind that produce those ROIs, those return on investments, when it comes to holiday lets, etc.?
Yeah, I think, we all know the one in property, location is definitely key. I often get asked what's the perfect holiday home. Well, if you look at the UK market, I would definitely break it down into your coastal market, your rural market, and then your strong urban market. So your urban for me would be your Edinburgh, Glasgow, Liverpool, Manchester, London. Really, from an urban point of view, we would always look at a good cross section of tourism and commercial and contractor. We obviously see a lot of people in the service department space focusing on corporate and contractor, but I do believe you want good tourist demand in an area to really make it stack up over the long term. Because the contractor and the corporate stuff will come and go and ebb and flow, whereas tourism is a consistent underlying factor. Where I see, a lot of people got into the space in the SA contractor, and we're seeing kind of oversupply in that. But there's too many peaks and troughs, and obviously, government funds and where different projects are going on then will drive that for short periods, whereas tourism in those kind of tier one cities is an underlying force. Naturally, if we look at it year on year, probably increases in most of them. So I would say always location. If it's coastal and rural, mainly domestic travel, the British always like to go to the seaside. So coastal is probably always going to be a number one performer. That's certainly what we find on the portfolio. Is coastal is always very strong. If you're coastal, things like sea view, proximity to the beach, are all going to play a role. If it's coastal, access to national parks, walks, log burners, right up there in terms of key attributes of a property that people search for and book for. Hot tubs are a plus and a minus at the moment, but so there's certain things, you can have a list of 10 things and go, right, I need to check as many of these as possible. And certainly if you're starting from scratch, I would say, pick your location for whatever that reason is. It might be a location that is close proximity to you, and therefore that area very well, and that might be the driver of what market you go after. Whereas if you're picking a market from scratch, then I'd be certainly saying look at urban, but make sure it's one of those cities where tourism is certainly an underlying footfall factor, not just too heavily reliant on contractor and corporate. And then ultimately coastal, because coastal just is consistent in terms of what it delivers. It's seasonal, but it's consistent, and domestic travel in the UK is increasing year on year. And we also know during recessionary periods or tighter periods like it is at the moment, domestic travel increases as well, with a lot of that. So and then ultimately it comes down to what we talked before early on in the call, Richard, it's around it's that how attractive you make the property and those design features. It's what's going to give you the standout. And we've seen the standard of product in the market really increase over the last 3 years. When we came in the market 2017 and 2018, certainly in the traditional holiday let markets, the seaside and rural, there was a lot of average stock, really, really average, kind of what I would say, 3-star stock. So when we came in, we wanted to deliver 4 and 5-star stock, primarily 5-star. So everything we would look at, it had to be design led, because we wanted to create attractive properties. But the bar has been raised and sustained, and you've seen a lot of people coming into the market, knowing that they need to deliver better quality, and therefore it's raised the overall quality of properties available. So it is more difficult to get standout now. But then that comes down to those little bits we were talking about, like photography. I mean, you just have to scroll through Airbnb and see how many people don't take photography seriously.
Yeah.
It still just, it blows my mind. And then you're into things like your pricing and dynamic pricing and daily daily driven price and length of stay. There's so many different levers to pull.
Yeah.
But it kind of depends on where you are on the journey of which one is the right one to pull at what point in time ultimately. But anyone getting started, I would be saying, right location, know who your guests are going to be actually and who you're going to be targeting. And then quality of design and quality of photography. They're the kind of things, if you don't do those bits well, it's not going to be a comfortable journey. If you get those right, the other bits you'll be able to tweak as you go along and kind of find your feet and learn.
Tremendous. I love it. Cracking stuff unfolding. I'm processing all of it in my head just now. You mentioned obviously the likes of Airbnb and stuff. I'm just wondering what your opinions are on the marketing of these assets, these properties, the old classic, to B&B or not to B&B, online travel agents or self-management. Where's your kind of thoughts on those areas?
It's definitely a balance. So, if I look at our host and stay business, I think as of today we're 1,016 properties on that platform. So, we're through the 1,000 barrier now, which is a good milestone for us. And around a quarter of all our bookings come to us direct.
Right.
And to be honest, we expected that contribution to grow as we grew. We've always been around about a quarter direct. And our ambition is to get that to about 50% over the next few years. So we've got a balance between OTA and direct. However, the one factor that makes that more difficult is that as we add more stock volume and performing stock volume, it makes the job easier for Booking.com and Airbnb to drive bookings into us. So
yes.
And they're obviously significantly bigger. So you would expect that as you get bigger, it'd be easier to drive direct, which it is. But as a contribution of everything you're driving, it actually can get more challenging because the bigger players are able to drive more bookings off more quality stock being produced by us. So
of course,
it's a bit of a funny one from that point of view. But I'm a believer of, you definitely want direct bookings in the mix, and there's easy ways to do that, from just having a direct website and making sure that a guest that books with you knows that next time they stay, instead of booking through Airbnb, they can book directly. Building that email marketing database and starting to do a weekly or a monthly email, social media campaigns. There's lots of basics that you can do to make sure you drive some level of direct booking. And it's back to, you're not going to be 100% direct overnight. And I would argue that you don't want to. There'll be others in the industry that argue that you do want to, but for me, it's about balance. And then if you look at a Booking.com and an Airbnb, well, the reach they've got on global scale, for me, it's a tap you don't want to turn off. If they can bring us a guest and we do a great job and we can retain that guest going forward, then that's a massive plus.
That's it. The two of them are coming hand in hand. Yeah, exactly. And those simple little thinking about my customer things, they've came in the door, doesn't matter how they've come in, I've now got them. How am I going to treat them? How am I going to serve them? Can I offer them a discount the next time they come? Can I show them how they can easily book with me? Can I keep in touch with them? Get, those simple ideas about a wee email, just every now and again. Oh, do you remember your time? And oh, by the way, the big festival's coming up again in a couple of months. Do you want to book in again? Just those wee simple things of just thinking about your customer, and it can help your business. Who knew?
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. You're totally right. And then we all know guests have got habits. So some people will always book through Booking.com, will always book through Airbnb because they're used to it, they know it, they feel comfortable. And that's fine. That's just one segment of what the market is. So again, there's no silver bullet on that. I think it's all in balance and saying, right, with each of those different channels, how do I get the best result out of each? Because ultimately, you bring all that together, that's what's going to give you the biggest overall impact.
Yeah, definitely. Now, legislation. Let's get on to this stuff. As we've seen in every area of property, something bubbles along and it's just kind of quiet and nobody really bothers. And then it becomes the thing, the fad, the fashion. Of course, what happens? Everybody swamps to it, good people, bad people, all sorts of things. And then who's the next behind? Government with the big boots on. How can we dominate this? How can we control this? How can we make money from it, quite frankly, as well? And we're seeing a lot of that. It's really, the heads are above the parapet when it comes to things like SA, FHS, DHL, whatever you want to call this
Yeah.
industry. In Scotland, we've really seen it, obviously, lots of
Yeah.
legislation brought in, licensing applications, but England, of course, never far behind. Either
Yeah.
we do something first and then England government comes in, or England does
Yeah.
something first and
Yeah.
What's your
Yeah.
thoughts on all this? Do you like it, not like it? How do you see it unfolding?
So a few different parts to it. So I think if you take legislation overall in the industry, I think it's a positive thing because legislation does again raise the bar, raises standards, gets rid of poor operators. And
Yeah.
if we look at the SM, FHL market, as you say, whatever you want to call it, we've seen a lot of stock come into the marketplace. And at certain points in the year and in certain locations, there is an oversupply in the market.
Yeah.
So regulation will help with that and to realign the supply and demand factors, which overall will be a positive in the years ahead.
Yeah.
I think if you look at it from a health and safety point of view, it's currently too easy for somebody to list a property and rent it out on Airbnb without true regard for compliance items such as gas safety, ICR, PAT testing, fire risk assessment, all these things. And again, in service apartments and Furnished Holiday Lets, they're all more prevalent than any other type of property strategy. So I think regulation in that part of it and making sure that an operator has to have everything in line to let the property, I completely agree with, and that's been our philosophy from day one. We have a 10-point plan that if an owner comes onto host and stay, they have to have all of them in line. Which the great thing is the licensing scheme that Scotland would roll out with all the things that we have within our plan. So I believe that is the right way. I think the issue, if I look at what's happened in Scotland, is not necessarily what you have to have in place. And obviously you've got licensing and planning kind of separate. So let's stick on the licensing piece. I think with what Scotland's brought in on licensing, I agree with all of the kind of hoops that are required to jump through. I think they're all the right things. What I don't think is right is the fact that you can apply for a license and you don't know when you're going to get it or not get it. If you can apply for a license today and you've submitted all your documentation, but in 30 days you're going to get a yes or no answer, I think we can all live with that ultimately.
Yeah.
Because there's an end date. What we can't live with is I put my information in and I'm waiting until I don't know when, and that's what is, in my view, is stopping the whole thing. Whereas if Scottish government come and said, right, 30 days, you'll have your answer, because let's be honest, to review what needs to be reviewed, it's quite a lot of time when it's kind of most people are going to have the things in place that they need to, and it's not difficult checks that need to be done. I think we need a commitment on in X number of days. Let's say even if it's 90 days, at least we've got a time period and we can all work. We all know what that is, and at the end of it, we've got an answer. So I think the licensing one for me is quite simple in terms of what it is. I think the rough structure of it is actually correct, but the fact that you don't know when you're going to get an answer is obviously the issue. If you look at it from a planning point of view, I mean, I think we know across the UK as a whole, we always have had issues with planning and probably always going to. And the planning one is a difficult one because then you're back down to interpretation, different by kind of council and borough area and whatever else. Should it be a planning class? Quite possibly to a certain degree, because it is a bit different. It's not, it's not a hotel or a B&B, and it isn't a residential property. So again, it probably does fit from that point of view, but it's then looking at, right, what factors go in. I think with all of these, certainly from a planning point of view, there needs to be more yes, no, black and white answers than there should be. All of these come back down to committee decisions. And I think, once again, we're all probably similar in thinking that stuff that's managed by committee doesn't often go very well. The planning one's difficult. I think what we're planning for in England is that, certainly from a host and stay point of view, we're saying to all of our owners, look, with us anyway, we're already asking that you've got to have all of these things in place, your fire risk assessment, your PAT testing, your legionnaires, etc., because that's what we believe is right. So from a licensing point of view, all of our owners are already in the right position. If we look at the planning side of it, we're very much expecting that if a planning class comes into play and there's going to be grandfather rights apply, therefore properties already operating as holiday lets would be given that planning classification. There needs to be something that's driven off. We fully anticipate that being on whether a property is registered self-catering property or not with the valuation office agency. again, we would always advise our owners that if they're going to let the property commercially, i.e., not use it 6 months themselves and let it for 6 months, but they're going to, let it commercially for probably 10 months of the year or 11 months of the year or more, then it needs to be registered for business rates and operated like a business. One, because it's the right way of doing it. If it's the only property you've got, there's financial incentive to do it. And actually, back to the whole thing and anything, it's the right thing to do. But we're encouraging our owners to make sure that they're registered, because if they intend to continue to operate the holiday let for any medium term period, get it registered, because if something does come in, again, you've got your ducks in a row and we're as planned and prepared as we need to be. So I think the crux of it, I think a lot of stuff is actually right. It's back to the execution piece, and for me, the Scotland one is just, we need a timeline on submit and you get your answer. Like, if we can do that, it solves the problem. I don't know the answer on the planning one. It's more difficult because it's more subjective. But I certainly licensing one, I think it's the right step. It just needs to be managed properly. But we're talking about government and councils and whatever else, and management doesn't really fit within their phraseology or whatever you want to call it.
Very, very diplomatically put. You're used to that, that's for sure. It's always an interesting one whenever a tax change comes or a legal change comes, a compliance change comes. It's like, I wonder how this is going to unfold. And then, of course, we see it. But, you stay professional, you stay in the game, you unfold things. And I love the fact that you've got that brain of getting ahead of it as well. But wait a minute, no, this is the moral thing to do. Let's protect our guests. Let's do this, and I don't care if they've not even told us yet. I don't care if it's not even compulsory yet or it's not properly mapped out yet. Let's do this for us, for our people. I like that, a moral compass to guide your business.
And we've needed more of that kind of the black and white guidance. We look, I think it was 3rd of October, fire regulations changed in small guest paying properties, and we needed that. We needed kind of, this is what you must have if you want to operate, because there's too much in our industry of, well, this would be guidance, you should really have this, but if you don't, well, there isn't really anything we're going to do about it. Where I think we're not very good at that. We need if you want to operate, this is what you need and this is why you need it. That helps us as a managing agent, because we can at least work with the owner, say, look, if you want to let it, this is what you need, so let's get it done. There's no, whereas some of the guidance at the moment, we'll get kicked back from owners and say, well, it's not a legal requirement. Well, no, it's not a legal requirement, but you've got, a husband and wife and 3 kids staying in your property. What's the right thing to do by them? You by saying, well, I don't need this, is not the right approach. And in our view. So I think we do need it. We need more black and white regulation and rules to play by, I think. But we need government to able to help us actually, facilitate getting that in play, not hinder us doing it.
Exactly. No, wise words indeed. Good man. Now, this empire that you've built, for crying out loud, I mean, come on, the SDDE Smith Group, all these functions underneath it, all these services, and you've got the home and host and stay, sorry, you mentioned earlier, you've got the styled, you've got the legals, you've got the construction. How on earth are you managing all of this? How on earth are you getting some sleep?
Sleep not very often, because I've got 2 little kids as well, both under 5, so that makes it a little bit difficult. But we've got a big team, which I suppose our employee count as of today is over 425. So we are a big business from that point of view. But again, we built it with the philosophy of, we want to have as much in-house as possible. We're not an outsourcer. We want in-house, because we want to be able to control process and quality. Right. And also we want to be as price competitive as we can on each of the services we provide. So us providing those services in-house enables us to kind of what we call vertical margin integration. So we can make a bit of margin on finding the property, then on refurbishing it and designing it and then managing it. Whereas if you think most people within the sector will be specialist on management, they'll charge a big fee for that and then outsource. Whereas we want to kind of control end to end, so we can manage quality and process, but we have to then build our margin vertically. Hence, we'll have different parts of that service. But also, we know that a property coming on board with us, we're going to get the right property at the end of the process that we know is going to produce the right performance to generate the right revenue, both for us and for the owner as well. So as we've gone on that journey, wherever a client has essentially said to us, well, can you do that for us, or can you do this for us? It might be in the first instance we can't, and we need to use a third party. So legals, as an example, we use.
Yeah.
It was always a firm we referred and recommended, and we worked with. They did our own conveyancing, they did our clients, and that reached a point where they could no longer service the volume we were bringing through, and we had a decision to make in terms of, right, what do we now do? So the lady Jo, who was actually delivering the service for us as a conveyancer, she came over and we set the business up together. Jo's a partner in that business, and subsequently we've started it and grown it, knowing that we've got a client base on tap already, but also knowing that with our approach to kind of the outward facing market as well, there's an opportunity to drive revenue and inbound business from outside of the group, which hopefully then also gives us another entry point into the group. And if I look at it as of today, what we're looking at all the time is, where does somebody on that journey have to go outside of group and deal with a third party, and then ask ourselves the question, should we bring that into group? Is the value in bringing it into group, or should it just stay as a referral partnership? And it might be is a referral partnership for the next 18 months, but in the background we're planning on bringing it in. Let's say finance and insurance, as an example, is something we don't do within group, but
Right.
As we're at a certain point in time, it's probably logical that we should have that within group, just to create that extra bit of stickiness, really.
Brilliant. I love it. It's just growing and growing and growing. It's amazing. So listen, Dale, I want to be respectful for your time. You've given such amazing value already, which is brilliant. Let's look back. Incredible journey. So many twists and turns, so many different things that have just arrived and problems you've solved and stuff. What was the most challenging time? When you look back, what's oh wow, I'll tell you at that point, Richard, I just, what sticks out for you?
I mean, COVID period was a difficult one, definitely, as it was for all of us. But I would have said the biggest challenge for us consistently is probably how we deal with the growth. So we're always pushing to grow. You look from a employee count and revenue point of view, we've pretty much doubled in revenue every year. We're going to post about 30 million this year, which is up from 16 last year, which is up from 8, which is up from 2. So we've grown quickly, but and the challenge with that is deciding, are you going to invest ahead of the curve, or are you going to follow up behind the curve? I've always been a believer of investing ahead of the curve. So putting the marketing spending, putting the people cost and infrastructure in place before the sales necessarily come, which is a difficult game to play, because if the sales don't come, you've got some difficult choices to make.
Yeah.
But it's enabled us to be able to provide the right level of service. Whereas if we were trying to force the growth and not necessarily put the infrastructure and the employee resource in place, we wouldn't be able to deliver on that service quality, which at a certain point in time then starts to hinder the growth. And I think that for me is always the balance. Obviously, to do that, you're always balancing cash flow, because you're looking at, right, where's the next pound on revenue coming from, and where's that going? It's probably not going straight to profit. It's being redeployed into investment to continue that growth. So you're always balancing cash from that point of view. So certainly, back to your question, COVID is the most challenging period that we've been through, because it was kind of, are we, aren't we, in terms of going to survive, not going to. I think the one bit that got us through COVID is that investors were still buying and still wanted to deliver projects. So whereas our host and stay management business was pretty much, the doors were closed for servicing guests, we did have owners who were buying property that still needed designing, still needed refurbishing, that was going to come on for management, and contracts were signed as soon as we opened the doors. I think we went into COVID with about 100 properties, and we came out of COVID with about 250. So, we were able to take advantage of that and grow the portfolio in that time, and that helped us get through that period. So that was certainly the most difficult period. But ongoing, our challenge is, right, well, how do you deal with growth? If you keep it on growing, how are you going to balance that, and where does that investment go? And say, is it ahead of curve or behind curve, and juggling the cash flow that goes along with it? That's a challenge ultimately.
Oh, definitely. And you know, Dale, the word I'm hearing a lot is balance. It's amazing how many times that factors into some of your answers. You know, you're talking about balancing the growth and expansion, but being
Mhm.
able to actually deliver it. And you spoke earlier about balancing, you know, a portfolio with a, you know, furnished holiday let market. But
Yeah,
again, you know, that might get hit with things. So we need to balance it with residential and commercial and
yeah,
so on, you know.
yeah,
How do you balance the family part of the puzzle? You just spoke about these two amazing wee kids, you know, under
yeah, yeah,
five and stuff, senior friends, maybe doing
yeah,
the golf you fell in and out of love with.
yeah,
How do you
yeah.
balance that?
Um, Again, it's a difficult one. I was having a conversation the other day actually with someone who's at the point in their business where they're not sure whether they want to grow it, do they want to kind of solidify it, do they want to, they're thinking about having kids. And for me, and how I was as brought up, it was kind of, there was no real separation between, you know, work, family time, you know, sports, all that type of stuff. And I'm probably the same philosophy with my kids. It's certainly not, you know, when I come home at night, I'll do, you know, bedtime and bath time as much as I can. I'm there on a weekend now pretty much all of the time, whereas in my last job I wouldn't have been as much. So
Right.
I think I'm in control more, which is great. It's up to me to
Good.
make decisions on where I spend the time and where I don't. But also if I look at my two little ones, you know, the business is part of our life and therefore it's part of their life as well. It's certainly
Yeah.
not kept separate. You know, they kind of see it and feel it, and I want them to, because for me it isn't a segregation of work is here and family time is here and whatever else. It's kind of all one, and that's the bit I love and enjoy about it, and how I
Yeah.
want them to kind of grow up as well. So
Yeah.
um so that one, it kind of, it is a balance, but we've talked about balance a lot, but I suppose balance is difficult, and whether it actually exists or not, I think there's maybe
Well,
more counterbalances. I do a bit of this and then a bit of that. But yeah, on the family one, I just see it all as kind of being the same thing. It's, from a family perspective, we're all in it together, we're all on the journey together, and therefore, you know, it kind of is what it is from that point of view. There's certainly no segregation, or we try not to have any segregation in it.
yeah. It's just life. It's
Yeah,
just your life.
completely.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I love
exactly
that.
that.
Yeah, again, it's something else I can definitely echo and mirror. Definitely, it's not job. It's not the job. This thing over there in a box,
Yeah,
separate. No, no, it's what I do. This is how
yeah,
we live. This is what we're up to. And again, loads of great memories. Taking my young kids through properties and traveling and all sorts of stuff.
yeah,
And it's what Dad does, and I might
yeah,
do some of this as well. Who knows? I love that. It's just your life,
yeah,
and
yeah,
you're making sure you're giving them the value that you can.
yeah,
Tremendous.
completely, completely.
What a beautiful, we're going to end there because that is a beautiful way to just cap all of that. You know, the amazing journey, the profits and the success and the services and stuff. Yeah, aye, brilliant. But the moral compass, planning things, growing things, working with your partners, working with mentors, doing everything with your family. Just tremendous. What an amazing story. And folks who are listening, watching, remember, whenever it's safe to do so, follow this man. You know, jump into the show notes, click off into the group, all the sites and stuff, because they've got loads of services they can help you with. Or maybe just follow him himself and his journey and see what he's doing and how many people he's helping as he goes on. It's absolutely brilliant. But you've certainly helped folks today. Dale Smith, for being on This Week in Property. Thanks a million.
No, thanks, Richard. Really enjoyed it.